Hey everybody, this is Mark with iPhone 128, and can you make a movie on a TV camera? That's what we're going to be checking out in this video. So we have a $20,000 RED camera that is meant for movies, and right in front of me I have a $10,000 Panasonic TV camera. These are the type of things that you're going to see when there's TV crews that are recording the news. That is what this camera is used for. But this one is actually from 2009, and now you can get it for $2,000 on eBay used. So with such an affordable camera that can shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second, is it actually worth getting a TV camera to use on your next production? Oh, and by the way, this whole thing right here was shot on that camera. Now to a nicer one. If you're looking for a big camera that can get great video, you're going to be spending upwards of $15,000 to $20,000, especially if you're going for someone like RED or ARRI. This camera, when it launched in 2009, was $10,000. Now you can get it for used on eBay for about $2,000, and it's actually a fairly good deal, but is it really that great? Specs is fairly decent. It shoots 1080p at 60 frames per second, which was pretty crazy for back in the day. 2009, 1080p was really not the standard, and especially 60 frames per second. This does have interchangeable lenses, and it has servo power, so you can power up the lens and use the motorized zoom, that sort of stuff. Stuff you see on today's latest cameras as well is on this one. So like I said, I wanted to see, can you make a movie on this camera? So we made a couple minute, really short film using only this camera, and I want to show that to you right now. So here's the movie we made on this camera, and then I'll tell you about my experiences. So first off, this build is not at all small. It's expected with cinema cameras, but this one is just ridiculously big. It has a built-in shoulder pad like most TV cameras, so you're going to need a tripod plate. Luckily, this one has a VCT U14 from Sony, and it works fairly nicely, and it has a bunch of mounting points so I can mount on the tripod, and this just slides right in. So that's awesome. And you can do stuff like that for cinema cameras too. If you have a shoulder mount, you can get a similar tripod adapter system for that, so it works good. But the only issue with this camera that's making it really huge is this monitor right here. This is the Atomos Shogun Flame, and I have to use this because I do not have media for the card. So RED is really the only brand that uses proprietary media. They use the RED Mini Mags, but this one also uses some pretty funky cards. Now it does have an SD card port, but that is only for firmware and metadata stuff. This uses a Panasonic P2 card. So it's a $800 SSD that will get you 32 gigabytes worth of storage. That's ridiculous. So I'm actually recording through SDI to the Atomos Shogun Flame. at 1080p 60 frames per second. So that is what this cable is for right here. And we also do get power. This has multiple XLR ports, which is really awesome. There's 2 in the back, 1 on the side, but the one on the side only gives you 48 volt phantom power, and I couldn't use the microphone I wanted because it didn't need that phantom power. So I had to go to the ones on the back to actually disable that function. And because this is a TV camera, it's meant to be live broadcasted. So you get a ton of ports. We've got 2 SDIs, audio in, audio out, timecode, gem lock, all that sort of stuff that you may need. That is on cinema cameras today, not as popular and it's not used as much, but it's nice to have if you're going to be going on a big production. One good thing about actually using the Atmos is that it has a decent screen on here, because the screens on here are horrible. The 2009 technology was not that great. The screens are super tiny, and especially the viewfinder, it's not great at all. You can hardly see anything. It's impossible to focus. And speaking of focus, I can never get a single thing that looks decently sharp on this camera. So going through all of the footage and while recording, everything in this camera is extremely soft. I have never been able to get a single thing to focus properly on here. And it does have a fairly long focus throw, which is nice, but I can never get anything to focus properly. We even had to get out a tape measure from the sensor marking on here to our subject using the markings on the tape measure and the length provided on the lens, but we were still unable to get perfect focus. So it's really weird how you cannot focus anything on this camera. So that is why everything looks very out of focus. But for low light performance, it's surprisingly good. We were using just a couple of lights on the ceiling as well as 1 softbox, and that lit the whole scene up very nicely. The lens I'm using right here has a minimum aperture of 1.6, which is pretty fast, and it's measured in f-stops, not t-stops like it is in cinema. And we were basically shooting around 2.5, 2.8 the entire time. And when I was a little out of range of the light, I opened it up, but never all the way. So this thing's pretty good in low light. I'm impressed, way better than some of my other cameras. It's really rivaling my Red with performance in low light. And this lens is incredibly wide. Now, camcorders have weird markings for focal lengths, because right now this is a 4.5 millimeter lens, and it can go all the way up to, I believe, 77. So yeah, it's pretty wide. And not only are you far from the subject, even when you're close, but it has a very large field of view. So you can capture everything in the scene. That's actually one of the benefits of using a TV camera, is that it's meant to get a lot in the scene. So there you go. That is how we made a movie using a TV camera. There's quite a few issues that you do not expect with a cinema camera. A lot of stuff you have to work around. The focusing on here, and just a really strange, I could not get anything to focus. But if you are looking for wide angle and low light performance, is actually fairly decent. Now, the video quality, even though 1080p at 60 frames per second is not the best, I would say that even this camera shooting in 1080p would look better, even though it's in 4K right now. But if you're looking for a really cheap way to get a decent camera, this is a great way to go. I don't recommend it for big productions, and to me it was quite frustrating at times. But yeah, it's a decent camera if you're looking to get started and upping your game with filmmaking. I don't recommend it, but there you go. That's my opinions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.